What's going on, guys? My name is Captain Reddit and today we're gonna look at some r/ProRevenge. Let's get right into it. You want to be rude and racist to people that's trying to help you. Now you can enjoy half of a roof over your head. I own a small home improvement company. I do alright for myself, but for some reason my family thinks I'm rich. They don't realize that I'm saving money for all 4 of my kids to go to college, and I have 12 employees to take care of. All my money is tied up. The roof on my aunt's house was in deplorable condition. Last July, my grandmother talked to me into fixing it for free. It wasn't an easy job either. It's a 12 by 12 pitch, 3 layers thick, with cedar shake on the bottom. Normally I would charge 15k for this type of job, but I let my grandmother talk me into it. I asked my employees to volunteer their only day off that week. To my surprise, all 10 of my laborers decided to show up. They all refused to clock in. They told me my family is their family, and for my family they can only charge cerveza, which means beer. Honestly, I was humbled by their generosity. As soon as we get into my aunt's house, we start setting up, and my guys started playing the radio. They were listening to some very Mexican music. Then my cheesy ass cousin decided she was going to go outside and start yelling at these guys about the music and had them turn it off. About an hour later, my cousin came outside again to tell these guys to put their shirts on because she felt it was inappropriate for her 8-year-old daughter to see a man working with his shirt off. After the tear off was done and we installed a new roof deck, I went out to get a couple of buckets of chicken and few cases of beer. Everyone was standing in the yard eating chicken and drinking beer, talking and joking around and having a good time. Then my cousin decided to come out yet again. This time she's complaining about everyone drinking on the job. This time I pulled her to the side and reminded her that these guys were doing a 15,000 job for free. I flat out told her she needs to shut the cheese up and get back to the house. That's when she decided to slap me across my face. Right away I called the police and had her arrested. After the police drove off with her in handcuffs, my aunt completely lost her cheese. She started screaming at me and then threatened to call ICE on my employees. She told me I should be ashamed of myself for not hiring legal American citizens. I told my crew to pack up their cheese and hit the road. They're nicer than me because they went up and tarped the roof off before they left. About 2 days later, I sent my aunt a text message stating that I expect a sincere, well-written apology letter for all of my employees if she wanted her roof finished. About a week later, I was served a subpoena by the police. My aunt was suing me for the damages. I explained the whole situation to the judge and showed her the message that I sent my aunt requesting a simple apology letter, to which the judge fully agreed on my behalf. My aunt was ordered by the court to write 10 sincere apology letters to my employees before I finish her roof. She still hasn't written those letters and she still doesn't have a roof. Edit. I believe the only reason she hasn't wrote those letters is yet because that tarp is still holding up. My guys are professionals. We'll see what happens after a couple of thunderstorms. I mean, this whole situation looks really bad if you look at it from everyone's perspective, but come on, suing your cousin? I mean, I guess it's your family business, so I'm gonna leave you to it. Anyway, my friend's ex-wife gets his family business shut down and burns their lives to the ground. Not what you may think. Sorry for somewhat of a misleading title, but I couldn't resist. This story isn't about me, but 2 people I'm friends with. We'll call one Ray and one Justin. I'm posting this with Justin's permission and he'll probably be reading the thread. Some background. Ray and Justin grew up in an extremely restrictive, insular religious community that borders on being a cult. They both read a lot from a young age, even though reading outside the religion's material was discouraged, and so both of them grew increasingly skeptical and dissatisfied with their environment due to having this peek into the outside world. In high school, this shared mindset brought them together and they started secretly dating. For context, dating was absolutely strictly forbidden in this religious community. You went straight from single to married with 0 in between. So when Justin and Ray's parents caught them dating, they forced them to get married. To be clear, it wasn't like they even had cheese. They basically were driving around together and holding hands in the downtown square where all the kids hung out. Very tame, sheltered kid stuff. Ray and Justin started living together as husband and wife, but unfortunately for their families, putting those 2 together doubled their resiliency, and together they cooked up a plan to get out. They set up a secret bank account at a bank outside the religious community's influence. since their families had access to their accounts and everyone who worked at the main bank was also in the same community and gossiped about everyone's financial transactions. They started squirreling away money in small amounts the families wouldn't question being missing from their paychecks. When they were 20, they finally had enough money to start over and they got out. They basically left their house in the dead of night with nothing but what could fit in their car and uprooted to live across the country. Pretty quickly after they moved, they decided to get amicably divorced since they never wanted to be married anyway. They still lived together for a while and basically became something between platonic roommates and each other's only family. Over time, they started dating other people. Some partners were scared off by the weird relationship between them, but most got it and understood that Justin and Ray had basically bonded through mutual trauma. I also met both of them during this time and we became close friends. This whole time, both their families and other members of their community were relentlessly harassing them. People were showing up at their house at all hours, and they had reason to believe people were trying to steal their identities over the years, though they'd fortunately both put a freeze on their credit, so nothing ever came out of it. Then Justin had a bad accident. A really bad accident. He was on his bike and a car blew through a stop sign without slowing down and prowled right into him. He had to be rushed to the hospital and landed in the ICU. Ray was his only emergency contact and I was with her and some other friends when she got the call. I immediately drove her to the hospital with a couple of other people and she was melting down, understandably. The hospital staff wouldn't let us all in when we got there, but they let Ray in. She came out periodically to let us know what was going on. Justin was unconscious, but he was totally out of it and didn't seem to know she was even there, probably from the painkillers. But she was convinced he had permanent debilitating brain damage, and basically the group of us were just soothing her and reassuring her it would be fine. A friend of ours who worked at a hospital as an MRI tech was also stopping by when she could on her breaks and calming down Ray. We'd been there all night and part of the day at this point, and the medical staff was giving us reason to be hopeful, but things got worse. To this day, no one knows how they found out, but 14 hours after Justin's accident, his parents, uncles, and grandfather showed up. They immediately had us all removed from the ICU, Ray included. Unfortunately, as his ex-wife, she was no longer his legal next of kin and had no rights against his blood family. At this point, she was absolutely hysterical and inconsolable. She was convinced Justin's family would hurt him. I'm ashamed to say that all three of us that were there with her thought she was overreacting. We all knew Ray and Justin had a cheesed up situation, but it wasn't like his own family would do anything to impede his recovery. She was getting angry with us for trying to calm her down and try to explain that according to their religion, she and Justin deserved punishment from God, and only the greatest suffering could prompt repenting and redemption. She said their families embraced this thinking and wanted them to suffer because it would prove that they did the wrong thing by leaving, and suffering would drive them back into the fold. She said as long as Justin was with his family, he wouldn't be safe. Our friend who worked at the hospital came and found Ray at this point. She made Ray swear up down she wouldn't tell anyone she told her this, because she would get in deep trouble for releasing privileged information to someone unauthorized. But she'd caught wind that Justin's parents were aggressively demanding the hospital release him to their care, and they were involving lawyers. The hospital was currently refusing because Justin wasn't stable enough to leave, but our friend warned Ray that as soon as Justin get to be stable or lawyers scare the hospital enough, it's possible the parents would be able to take Justin. This shocked the rest of us. Realizing his parents were not only willing to remove Justin from a hospital that had saved his life and the condition he was in, but were actively trying to do it, made us really get for the first time why Ray was going out of her head with fear. At this point, Ray snapped into a do or die mode. Convinced that Justin was about to literally die if she didn't act, she decided she would do everything in her power to start a fire at home so that Justin's family would want to run back to put it out. And this wasn't too hard because she had a lot of dirt on the whole community she came from. Like a mad woman, she started blowing the whistle all over Justin's family. She called the IRS's fraud hotline and detailed all the ways that her family business was committing tax fraud. She submitted an ATF tip about how the same family business was illegally selling firearms firearms without a license and without following any of the proper protocols, and was knowingly selling guns to convicted felons. She reported one of Justin's uncles for owning several guns as a convicted felon. She also reported Justin's mom unlicensed daycare business, which was apparently extremely shady, including over 30 children packed into one house, with Justin's mom the only adult and many of the childcare duties being farmed out to Justin's 12 and 14-year-old sisters. She called CPS on Justin's uncles and his parents for keeping their children out of school and for physical abuse in one uncle's case. In all of these reports, she provided extensive details. She finished her calls and emails, and then she waited. We all waited for several hours and nothing happened. Then, miraculously, Justin became lucid enough to understand what was going on and make his own decisions, and he kicked his family out again. From there began a slow but steady path to recovery. In all the relief and excitement to see Justin on the mend, we'd almost forgotten about Ray's campaign of desperation until a couple of weeks later, when the screaming voicemails started pouring in to both of them. First, the business was being investigated by the IRS. Then, it was being investigated for the illegal firearms dealings. Then, the daycare was getting investigated. At first, Ray felt a little guilty, but then she was like,
"You know what? No regrets. They would have killed Justin."
From what they've been able to piece together in the year and a half since this happened, the business has gone under and the daycare is shuttered. The uncle is 6 months into the new 5-year prison sentence for firearm possession. CPS investigated, which scared the cheese out of the family, but nothing really came out of it, which is especially sad in the case of the cousins being physically abused. That said, the parents are now too scared to keep the kids home from school, and with the unlicensed daycare shut down, the mom's not exploiting her daughters' labor anyway, so she has no incentive to keep them home. So Justin's little siblings are at least getting their education. Justin and Ray are both happy and thriving. Justin unfortunately will never fully recover from the accident. He has some permanent neurological damage that results in tremors, but he's pumped to be alive. He can work a full-time job, he can still be pretty physically attractive, and as far as I'm concerned, he wins. Oh man, I've watched so many documentaries about cults, but sometimes it really hits you hard as to how harsh these people were living back when they were children. Just imagine all of this. Well, I'm happy everything turned out okay in the end. What do you guys think? Do you guys feel for both Ray and Justin? Do you think the family get what they deserve? Do you think they should have gotten more? Write in the comments below.